The rain was relentless that evening, a cold, needling torrent that turned the city sidewalks into glassy rivers. Lily Carter clutched her folder tighter against her chest, her heart hammering as she sprinted under the meager shelter of her broken umbrella. She was already 15 minutes late to the most important interview of her life. As she rounded the corner of the prestigious Monarch Hotel, she spotted a door slightly ajar, light spilling out like a beacon. Without thinking, she darted inside, gasping for breath. Inside, the air was warm and heavy, with the scent of leather and mahogany. The room wasn't the conference lounge she expected. It was intimate, expensive, too polished. A man sat alone, at the far end, pen in hand, scrawling notes across a leather-bound journal. He looked up at her sudden entrance, his expression unreadable, his presence somehow bigger than the room itself. His suit was charcoal, his tie loosened, his watch a gleaming artifact of wealth. Lily hesitated only for a moment before marching forward. "I'm so sorry I'm late," she blurted out, pushing damp hair from her face. "The weather, the traffic, I swear, today the universe had it out for me." She forced a smile, trying to mask her nerves with the same bravado that had gotten her through. Worse. The man said nothing, just tilted his head slightly, studying her as if she were a riddle. She mistook his silence for judgment and powered through. "I'm Lily Carter, here for the project coordinator interview. I know first impressions matter, and I promise I don't usually crash into rooms uninvited." Still silent, the man closed his journal slowly, the motion deliberate. His gaze, cool and assessing, lingered on her soaked jacket and scuffed heels. Lily shifted uncomfortably, the heat of embarrassment creeping up her neck. Why wasn't he saying anything? Was this some psychological test? You are Mr. Evans, right?" she asked, glancing nervously around the room that looked nothing like an HR office. He gave a small, almost imperceptible smile, the first crack in his otherwise granite demeanor. "No," he said finally, his voice deep and steady. "I'm Ethan Blake." The name hit her like a slap. Ethan Blake, the billionaire CEO of Monarch Hotels, the youngest self-made mogul in the city's history. Her stomach plummeted. "And you," he continued, folding his hands calmly, "just walked into my private study without knocking." The room seemed to shrink around her, the elegant walls closing in. Lily's mouth opened, then closed. No words forming, just sheer, abject horror. I, she stammered, backing toward the door like a cat trapped in a cage. I'm so sorry, I thought this was—" She gestured helplessly at the door. The rain, the universe. Ethan leaned back in his chair, regarding her with amusement now. "Relax," he said, almost lazily. "You're not the first person who's gotten lost in this hotel, though you might be the most interesting." His voice curled at the edges, a slyness that made Lily's skin prickle. "Interesting," she echoed, not sure if he was mocking her or genuinely entertained. "Breaking and entering is hardly on my resume." Ethan stood then, and Lily realized with a jolt just how tall he was. There was a dangerous, effortless confidence in the way he moved, like a man used to the world bending around him. "What's your name again?" he asked, already knowing, but forcing her to repeat it. "Lily," she croaked. "Lily Carter." Ethan nodded, slowly. "Well, Lily Carter, it seems fate has a sense of humor today." He approached her, not threatening, but not exactly harmless either. His gaze was intense, peeling back her layers without touching her. "Tell me," he said smoothly, "what were you planning to say in your interview?" Caught off guard, Lily blinked. "I was going to say that I thrive under pressure." A slow, genuine laugh rumbled from his chest, the sound startling her. "You certainly have an opportunity to prove that," Ethan murmured, stepping past her, to open the door. "Come on, I'll take you to the right place." Lily hesitated. This had to be a dream or a nightmare. But something about the moment, the strange pull in the air, made her trust him. As she stepped into the hallway beside him, she caught a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. It was the kind of smile that promised trouble. As they walked, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at her with a glint in his eye. "Seems your interviewer just cancelled," he said. "Flooded roads. Entire HR team is stuck downtown." Lily's heart sank. "So I rushed for nothing," she muttered bitterly. "Maybe not for nothing," Ethan said lightly. "You said you thrive under pressure. Why don't you prove it to me instead?" Her breath caught. Was he serious? Was he offering her what? "Prove it how?" she asked carefully. Ethan leaned in slightly, his voice low and intimate. "Convince me," he said. "Convince me you're worth keeping around." The challenge hung between them like a match poised above gasoline. Lily straightened her spine, her pride flaring. "Challenge accepted," she said without missing a beat. Ethan's smile widened just a fraction, approving, daring. As they stepped into a grand elevator, Lily realized two things. First, she had just volunteered for the most impossible test of her life. And second, somewhere between the wrong door and the wrong man, she might have just stumbled into exactly where she was supposed to be. The elevator doors closed with a soft chime, sealing Lily inside the mirrored box with Ethan Blake. She could see their reflections multiplied endlessly, her drenched and jittery, him composed and enigmatic. She adjusted her folder nervously, trying not to stare, but his presence was magnetic, as if he anchored the space around him. The silence stretched so long it became tangible, broken only by the soft hum of the elevator. Cables. "So," Lily said finally, needing to hear something, anything. "Is this a standard part of the Monarch Hotel's interview process? Get lost, crash a private meeting, and improvise a sales pitch?" Ethan chuckled, a deep, unguarded sound that somehow unsettled her more than silence. "Only for the extraordinary candidates," he said. "Or the ones brave enough to barge into the wrong room." His eyes gleamed under the muted light, reading her with unnerving ease. As the elevator ascended, Lily tried to steady herself. She wasn't naive. She knew men like Ethan Blake didn't just help random girls. There was an angle. There was always an angle. Still, she couldn't deny the strange electric pull between them, thick enough to taste. When the doors slid open, revealing a private lounge with panoramic views of the city, she realized this wasn't just an interview anymore. It was a test of another kind. Ethan gestured toward a pair of leather armchairs facing the window. "Sit," he said, not unkindly, but with the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Lily sat, carefully smoothing her skirt, feeling out of place in her damp budget blazer. He dropped into the chair across from her, lounging like a man with all the time in the world, while her nerves tightened with every second. "Tell me," he said, fingers steepled under his chin, "what's the most impressive thing you've ever done?" Caught off guard, Lily hesitated. She thought about her thin resume, her part-time jobs, the years spent scraping by. None of it sounded impressive, not compared to whatever billionaire criteria he was measuring her against. Still, lying wasn't an option. "I survived," she said quietly. "Every time life tried to drown me, I survived." Ethan's eyebrows lifted slightly, intrigued. "Not exactly the corporate answer I expected," he murmured. "Good." He stood suddenly, pacing a slow circle around the room. The movement was deliberate, almost predatory. Lily's heart thudded painfully in her chest. "You see, Miss Carter," he said, voice low, "this world doesn't reward survival. It rewards domination." He stopped behind her, and she felt, rather than saw, the heat of him. "Are you a survivor, or are you someone who can change the game?" The question felt like a knife poised at her throat. Lily forced herself to turn, in her chair, meeting his gaze head-on. "I haven't had the luxury of dominating anything," she said evenly, "but I learn fast, and I don't quit." Ethan studied her for a long moment, the only sound the rain tapping against the vast windows. Something shifted in his eyes. Approval, maybe, or curiosity. "Good answer," he said finally, and the tension in the room eased by a fraction. He moved to a sleek minibar and poured 2 glasses of water, handing one to her. "Cheers to survivors," he said, clinking his glass lightly against hers. Lily managed a small smile, grateful for the brief reprieve. "So what exactly do you want me to do?" she asked. Ethan smiled, a real devastating smile that transformed his face into something breathtaking. "Simple," he said. "Prove you're more than a misstep in the rain." Before she could ask how, his phone buzzed again. He checked it briefly, then looked back at her. "I have a meeting. Real one this time. Stay here. Think about it." And just like that, he was gone, leaving Lily alone with nothing but her racing thoughts and the breathtaking view of the storm-swept city. She stood, wandering toward the window, pressing her fingertips to the cool glass. From up here, the world seemed so small, so conquerable. A reckless, insane thought slipped into her mind. Maybe she could do this. Maybe this accidental meeting was the universe's way of cracking open the life she'd been too afraid to chase. She smiled to herself. A real smile this time, not the brittle mask she'd worn for years. Whatever Ethan Blake wanted, whatever impossible game he was setting, she wasn't going to back down. Not this time. The door creaked behind her and she turned sharply. It wasn't Ethan. A woman in a severe black suit entered, clipboard in hand, her expression frosty. "Miss Carter," she said, without offering a name. "Mr. Blake has instructed that you complete a task before he returns." Lily's stomach tightened. "What kind of task?" The woman smiled thinly. "Something only someone with initiative and resilience can handle." Lily squared her shoulders. "I'm listening." The woman handed her a single envelope. Inside was a list, cryptic, demanding, almost absurd. "Organize an impromptu charity dinner for tomorrow night. Find a keynote speaker. Secure a venue." Lily swallowed hard. It was impossible, which she realized was exactly the point. Ethan Blake didn't want another obedient employee. He wanted someone who could survive the impossible, and Lily Carter was ready to fight like hell to be that person. Lily gripped the envelope tighter as she hurried through the empty corridors of the Monarch Hotel. The rain had eased outside, but the storm inside her chest had only intensified. The task was absurd. She had less than 24 hours to pull off a charity dinner with no contacts, no resources, and no authority. It wasn't an interview anymore. It was survival under fire. And yet, beneath the fear, something else stirred. Excitement. She found herself smiling as she reached the lobby, where the concierge barely looked up at her sodden appearance. If she was going to succeed, she needed allies, fast. "Hi," she said brightly to the concierge, channeling every bit of false confidence she could muster. "I'm with Mr. Blake's office. We have an urgent event to organize, and I'll need your cooperation." She held her breath, expecting resistance, but the name Blake worked like a skeleton key. Doors swung open. Within minutes, she had a contact list in hand, a spare conference room reserved, and a grumpy banquet manager promising overpriced canapés. Lily worked the phones relentlessly, weaving stories, promising exposure, painting visions of grandeur with nothing but sheer audacity. Somewhere between her 4th call and her 12th no, she stopped feeling like an imposter. She was doing it, turning the impossible into merely improbable. As evening fell, Lily returned to the private lounge, expecting to find Ethan waiting. Instead, a sharply dressed young man leaned against the bar, smirking. "You must be the rain-soaked hurricane they're all whispering about," he said. Lily blinked. "Excuse me." The man extended a hand. "Adrian Ward, head of special projects, and apparently your babysitter for the evening." Lily shook his hand warily, noting the glint of mischief in his eyes. "Babysitter?" she repeated, crossing her arms. Adrian laughed. "Relax. Ethan has a knack for finding the strangest protégés. He asked me to keep an eye on you." Lily bristled at the implication, but bit her tongue. "I don't need a babysitter," she said. Adrian shrugged. "Trust me, neither did I. Yet here we are." There was something almost brotherly about his teasing, and against her better judgment, Lily found herself liking him. "So," Adrian said, pouring himself a drink, "tell me, little hurricane, what's your plan?" Lily outlined her progress, expecting him to poke holes. Instead, he listened attentively, nodding at her quick thinking and even offering a few insider tips. "You're not bad," he said, sounding almost surprised. "Most people crack under Ethan's mind games. You bend, but you don't break." Lily smiled grimly. "I've had practice." They worked late into the night, and for the first time in years, Lily lost herself in the thrill of building something against impossible odds. When Ethan finally returned, he found her standing at a makeshift planning board, hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, utterly transformed from the drenched girl who had stumbled through his door hours earlier. He watched silently from the shadows for a long moment before stepping forward. "Impressive," Ethan said, voice low. Lily turned, heart leaping at the sudden proximity. "You left me no choice," she said, trying to sound nonchalant. Ethan's lips twitched in amusement. "Necessity is the mother of invention," he agreed. His gaze lingered on her a beat longer than was strictly professional, and Lily felt the pull again, that dangerous, inexplicable gravity. Adrian cleared his throat loudly, breaking the moment. "She passed your test," he said. With style. Ethan's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, something that unsettled Lily more than any glare or silence had. Approval. Interest. Maybe even something closer to admiration. She wasn't sure if it was exhilarating or terrifying, probably both. As they reviewed the plans, Ethan kept circling back to Lily, asking questions, pushing her, testing her, and each time she rose to meet him, surprising even herself. By midnight, the framework of the event was solid. "Get some rest," Ethan said finally, his voice gentler than before. "Tomorrow will be brutal." Lily nodded, gathering her things. As she headed for the elevators, she heard Adrian say, low enough to think she wouldn't catch it, "She's different." Ethan's reply was quieter, but Lily caught the words anyway. "That's what scares me." She didn't look back, but a strange warmth bloomed in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as replaceable as she'd always feared. Back in her tiny apartment, Lily collapsed on her bed, fully clothed, staring at the cracked ceiling. Exhaustion battled excitement in her veins. She had crashed through the wrong door, fallen into the wrong life, and it felt more right than anything ever had. Tomorrow, the real trial would begin, but tonight, for the first time in forever, she allowed herself a small, fierce hope. She had survived worse storms. She could survive this one too, especially if Ethan Blake kept watching her the way he had tonight, like she was the only unpredictable thing in his perfectly controlled world. Morning came cruelly early, bringing a thin, watery sunlight through the broken blinds of Lily's apartment. Her muscles ached, her brain felt fried, but adrenaline shoved her out of bed before the alarm even buzzed. Today was the day she either proved she belonged or crashed spectacularly in front of the man who terrified and fascinated her in equal measure. She threw on the cleanest outfit she could find, twisted her hair into a knot, and practically ran to the monarch. Inside the hotel, chaos already hummed. Staff bustled with clipboards, deliveries clogged the grand entrance, and the air was thick with the metallic tang of nerves. Lily found Adrian by the ballroom, arms crossed, smirking. "Well, well," he said, "you didn't run off in the night. That's already further than most make it." Lily shot him a withering look, but secretly appreciated the acknowledgement. "Save the sarcasm," she said. "Where's Ethan?" "Waiting inside," Adrian replied, "and he's in a mood." Lily swallowed hard but forced her feet to move. She pushed open the double doors and stepped into the grand ballroom. Ethan stood near the stage, perfectly poised, his suit immaculate as always. His back was to her, but somehow he knew she was there. "You're late," he said without turning around. Lily glanced at her watch. 2 minutes past 8. "Good morning to you too," she muttered under her breath. He finally turned, and his face was unreadable, carved from marble. "Walk me through it," he said. "No greeting, no small talk." Lily squared her shoulders and launched into a rapid-fire briefing. Guest list, menu, seating arrangements, entertainment. "Line up!" Ethan listened without interruption, his grey eyes sharp and unwavering. When she finished, he walked slowly toward her, each step deliberate. "And what happens," he said, voice soft but dangerous, "if something goes wrong?" Lily didn't flinch. "Then I fix it," she said simply. Ethan stopped an arm's length away, studying her. After a long, tense silence, he spoke. "Let's make it interesting," he said. Lily blinked. "Interesting?" He smiled slightly, a shark smile. "A bet. If tonight goes flawlessly, you win. If it doesn't—" His voice trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Lily raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly am I winning?" Ethan's eyes gleamed. "A job," he said. "Real one. Full salary. Full responsibilities. Not just running errands or surviving storms." Lily's heart thudded painfully against her ribs. A real job. A real chance. "And if I lose?" she asked, her voice steady. Ethan leaned in just slightly, enough that she caught the faint scent of expensive cologne. "Then you walk out those doors," he said, "and we pretend we never met." The weight of it hit her like a punch. High stakes, no safety net. Exactly the way he liked to play. Lily hesitated for only a moment before lifting her chin defiantly. "Deal," she said. Ethan's smile deepened, a flash of approval breaking through his cool exterior. "I admire your recklessness," he murmured. "It reminds me of someone I used to know." There was something almost wistful in his voice, but it was gone too quickly. "To be sure." They shook hands, brief, electric, and the deal was sealed. The hours blurred after that. Lily raced from room to room, double-checking details, smoothing out last-minute disasters with pure grit. Adrian was a reluctant but invaluable ally, helping her diffuse minor crises with sarcastic advice and sly grins. By the time the first guests began to arrive, Lily was running on nothing but caffeine, adrenaline, and stubbornness. But everything, miraculously, was holding together. The event began smoothly. Speeches were delivered without a hitch. The auction raised more money than expected. Even the finicky lighting system, which had threatened to implode an hour ago, performed flawlessly. Lily hovered at the edges, invisible but vigilant, every nerve ending tuned to the slightest ripple of trouble. At one point, she caught Ethan watching her across the room, his expression inscrutable. When the last champagne flute was drained and the final check signed, Lily allowed herself a moment of fragile hope. Maybe, just maybe, she had won. But Ethan didn't approach her. He disappeared into the crowd, leaving her alone with her racing thoughts. She wandered toward the back terrace, needing air, needing space. The city sprawled out before her, glittering and cold. "You're not bad at this," a voice said behind her. She turned to find Ethan leaning casually against the doorway, hands in his pockets. "You made it look easy," he added, Lily smiled faintly. It wasn't. Ethan pushed off the wall, strolling toward her with slow, measured steps. Good, he said. If it had been easy, it wouldn't have impressed me. They stood in silence for a moment, the night heavy around them. Finally, Ethan spoke again. You won, he said simply. Relief crashed over her, so sudden and overwhelming that she almost staggered. Thank you, she whispered. Ethan shook his head. No, he said. Thank you for reminding me what real resilience looks like. His voice was rougher now, touched with something raw. Lily didn't know what possessed her. Maybe the exhaustion, maybe the triumph, but she reached out, brushing her fingers lightly against his sleeve. You don't have to carry it all alone, you know, she said quietly. Ethan flinched just slightly, as if the words had hit some buried wound. Maybe, he said after a beat, but some weights are too old to put down. The moment stretched between them, delicate and dangerous. Lily opened her mouth to say something, anything, but Ethan shook his head, stepping back. Congratulations, he said, voice cool again. Your contract starts Monday. Full benefits, full headaches. And with that, he vanished into the hotel, leaving Lily alone under the vast, indifferent stars. She should have felt victorious. Instead, all she felt was the growing certainty that winning Ethan Blake's attention had been the easiest part. Keeping it, surviving it, would be another. Storm entirely, and she wasn't sure she was ready. Not yet. Monday morning arrived with a grey, misty drizzle, casting a melancholy veil over the Monarch Hotel's gleaming facade. Lily Carter stood across the street, her heart hammering so loudly it felt like the whole city could hear it. This was no longer an accident, no longer a game. She was walking through those doors as an employee, as someone Ethan Blake had bet on, and the weight of that knowledge sat heavy on her shoulders. She crossed the street and entered the lobby, the familiar scent of polished marble and expensive flowers hitting her immediately. For a moment she stood still, feeling the pulse of the building. It felt different now. Bigger, colder, more dangerous. She straightened her spine, steeled herself, and headed toward the elevators. As she passed reception, she caught snippets of whispers. "That's her," someone said, low but not low enough. The new project lead, Blake's pick. Heat flushed up Lily's neck. She pretended not to hear, but inside, 1,000 tiny knives twisted. She wasn't invisible anymore. Eyes followed her, judging, questioning, some curious, others resentful. In this world, being noticed was as much a curse as it was a victory. She pressed the elevator button and waited, feeling the weight of invisible stairs pinning her in place. She wished she could disappear into the marble floor. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped in quickly, head down. But before they could close, a hand reached out to stop them. Adrian Ward slipped inside, his grin annoyingly bright for the gloomy morning. "Look who survived," he said. Lily mustered a weak smile. "Barely." Adrian chuckled. "Congratulations, little hurricane. You're officially one of us now." His tone was light, but there was an edge underneath, a warning, maybe. As the elevator rose, Adrian leaned casually against the mirrored wall. "Word travels fast around here," he said. "People want to know what you did to catch the dragons." Lily frowned. "Dragon?" Adrian shrugged. "Ethan Blake, cold blood, fire when provoked, impossible to tame." Lily swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "I just didn't run." Adrian's grin widened. "Exactly." They parted ways on the executive floor, Adrian heading left while Lily hesitated, adjusting the strap of her bag nervously. She found her desk tucked into a glass-walled corner, small but with a view of the city sprawling endlessly below. A thin folder sat neatly on the desk, labeled simply, "First Task." She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a list of projects, deadlines, contacts. No instructions, no encouragement, just expectation. Before she could even sit, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Conference room 7A, now. No signature, no explanation, but she knew who it was. She hurried down the hallway, heart thudding. When she entered the room, Ethan was already there, pacing like a caged lion. He didn't look up as she approached, just gestured toward a stack of files on the table. "Review these," he said. "Summarize the gaps. I want a report by noon." Lily nodded, adrenaline spiking. "And Miss Carter," Ethan added, finally meeting her eyes. His gaze was sharp, cool, almost clinical. "Mistakes are tolerated once, never twice." Lily held his gaze, refusing to show fear. "Understood," she said. For a fraction of a second, something flickered across his face. Satisfaction, maybe. Then it was gone, replaced by the same icy professionalism. "Good. You're dismissed." She left the room with the files clutched to her chest, the whispered judgments of the hallway waiting for her like a minefield. "She thinks she's special," someone muttered. "Let's see how long she lasts," another voice chimed in. Lily forced herself to walk steadily, head high, even as the words tore at her confidence. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to survive. Back at her desk, she dove into the files, determined to drown out the noise with work. Names, figures, contracts blurred together, but she pushed through the fatigue, the fear. Noon came faster than she expected. She bundled her notes neatly and made her way back to 7A. Ethan was waiting, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She handed him the report without a word. He flipped through it quickly, scanning. Then, to her shock, he nodded. "Acceptable," he said. In Ethan Blake's world, she knew, that was the equivalent of a standing ovation. Relief flooded her, but she kept her face neutral. "Thank you," she said, voice steady. Ethan looked at her for a long, long moment, as if weighing something invisible between them. "You're not what I expected," he said quietly. Lily blinked, unsure if it was a compliment or a warning. "Neither are you," she replied before she could stop herself. For a heartbeat, the corners of Ethan's mouth twitched upward, but then the walls slammed back into place. He turned away, signaling the end of the conversation. "Back to work," he said curtly. Lily returned to her desk, feeling both exhausted and strangely alive. She could still feel Ethan's gaze lingering, heavy and complicated. In the reflection of the glass wall, she caught her own image, messy bun, determined eyes, a storm quietly brewing under the surface. She smiled just a little. The whispers could keep coming. The looks could keep judging. She wasn't going anywhere, and neither, she realized, was whatever dangerous electric thing had begun sparking between her and Ethan Blake. The week blurred into a relentless parade of deadlines, tasks, and silent tests. Every morning, Lily braced herself for the invisible gauntlet she had to run. Whispers, judgmental stares, impossible assignments. Yet somehow she kept surviving, kept clawing her way through. Ethan Blake remained a looming figure on the horizon. Of her days, distant, commanding, and maddeningly unreadable. Their interactions were brief, clinical, until Friday afternoon when everything shifted. She was buried in spreadsheets when a folded piece of paper landed on her desk. No envelope, no preamble. She opened it, heart already racing. In Ethan's sharp slanted handwriting were just 2 lines. "Dinner, 7:30 La Rue. Dress appropriately." No explanation, no question mark. A summons, not a request. Lily stared at the note, 1,000 thoughts stampeding through her mind. Was this business? Another test? Something else entirely? Her pulse fluttered wildly at the thought. She glanced around, but no one seemed to notice. If anyone else received mysterious dinner invitations from the CEO, they were better at hiding it. She stuffed the note into her bag and tried to focus on her work. but concentration slipped through her fingers like water. By 6 o'clock, she gave up pretending. She rushed home, tore through her closet in a frenzy. Dress appropriately could mean anything. She settled on a simple black dress, elegant but understated, paired with modest heels. As she stood in front of the mirror, fixing her hair for the third time, she caught herself smiling nervously. "Calm down," she muttered. "It's just dinner. It's probably a strategy meeting. Or a trap." The rain had returned by the time she reached La Rue, a discreetly luxurious restaurant tucked into a quiet side street. She stepped inside, the warmth and low lighting wrapping around her like a hug. The maitre d' greeted her without hesitation, as if expecting her. "Right this way, Miss Carter," he said smoothly. She followed, heart pounding against her ribs, like a drum. Ethan was already seated at a corner table, nursing a glass of something dark. He looked up as she approached, and for the first time, his guarded expression slipped. His eyes, normally cool and calculating, softened, just for a second. "You came," he said, voice low. Lily sat down carefully, feeling like she was balancing on a wire stretched over a canyon. "You didn't give me much choice," she replied, trying for lightness. He smirked faintly. "True." A brief silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with things unsaid. A waiter appeared as if by magic, and Ethan ordered for both of them without asking. Lily raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. She recognized the tactic: control the environment, control the outcome. But she wasn't as easily dominated as he probably hoped. The food arrived quickly, delicate dishes arranged like art. Lily picked at her plate, appetite lost to the knot twisting in her stomach. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. "Why am I here, Ethan?" she asked, her voice sharper than intended. He set down his fork, steepled his fingers, and looked at her like a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "You intrigue me," he said simply. Lily blinked. "I thought I annoyed you." Ethan smiled, small, secretive. "You do, and yet here we are." His gaze was so direct, so disarming, that Lily had to look away. She traced the rim of her water glass with a trembling finger. "This isn't professional," she said quietly. Ethan's smile faded. "No," he agreed. "It's not." The weight of that admission hung between them. Lily forced herself to meet his eyes again. "What do you want from me?" she asked. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. Then he leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know yet," he said. "And that terrifies me." His honesty was like a slap, raw, unfiltered, vulnerable in a way she had never imagined Ethan Blake could be. Lily swallowed hard, her heart racing. She should leave. She should run as far and as fast as possible from this beautiful, broken man who could crush her without even meaning to. But instead, she stayed. "You're not the only one who's terrified," she whispered back. Ethan's eyes darkened, something fierce and aching flickering in their depths. "Good," he said. "At least we're both drowning." The rest of the meal passed in a strange, charged silence. They spoke little, but their eyes said everything: the fear, the longing, the fragile hope neither dared to name. When the check came, Ethan paid without hesitation. As they stood to leave, he hesitated, then reached out, brushing his knuckles lightly against her hand. The touch was brief, almost accidental. Almost. Outside, the rain had softened into a misty drizzle. Ethan walked her to the curb, hands shoved deep into his pockets, the perfect image of a man fighting wars inside himself. "Good night, Lily," he said, voice rough. She smiled up at him, heart breaking and blooming all at once. "Good night, Ethan." She turned and walked away, feeling his gaze burning into her back with every step. When she finally looked over her shoulder, he was still there, standing alone in the rain. watching her disappear into the night. The following week unfolded like a delicate balancing act, one Lily wasn't sure she could maintain much longer. Professionalism by day, chaos by night. At the Monarch, she and Ethan interacted with careful distance as if nothing had happened. No dinner, no whispered admissions in the rain, just business. But beneath every clipped meeting and exchanged glance, something crackled dangerously, unspoken but very much alive. Tuesday afternoon brought a storm of a different kind. A critical client event was scheduled, one that Lily had been assigned to coordinate. It was her first solo responsibility since the promotion, a test of her competence and resilience. By noon, everything was set. The seating chart finalized, the catering confirmed, the VIPs arriving promptly. Lily allowed herself a single breath of relief, and then disaster struck. The projector system, critical for the main presentation, failed catastrophically. No warning, no recovery. Lily stood frozen in horror as black screens flickered mockingly. Across the grand ballroom, a dozen top executives began murmuring, shifting in their chairs. Panic clawed at her throat, but she forced it down. Think, move, solve. Adrian appeared at her side, murmuring urgently, "Backup plan." Lily started, but her mind was a blank sheet. Ethan's voice echoed from a distant memory. "Mistakes are tolerated once, never twice." She swallowed hard. No panic, only action. "Manual presentation," she said, snapping into command. "Print out the slides. Deliver copies to every table. Keep the momentum alive. Adrian, stall them. Talk about the wine list. Tell a joke. Anything." Adrian grinned, impressed despite himself, and hurried off. Lily sprinted backstage, barked orders at the panicking tech team, and commandeered a printer from the hotel's admin office. Within minutes, she was hauling stacks of paper back to the ballroom, heart hammering, hands shaking. Staff moved like ants under her direction, placing handouts in front of every guest, just as the keynote speaker cleared his throat at the podium. By the time Ethan entered the room, silent, sharp-eyed, everything was back on track. The presentation flowed. The executives laughed and applauded. No one even seemed to notice the missing screens anymore. But Ethan noticed. Oh, he noticed. Everything. After the event ended and the guests began trickling out, he approached her, slow and deliberate. Lily stiffened, bracing herself for cold reprimand. Instead, he surprised her. "You improvised," he said quietly. His tone wasn't critical. It was something closer to wonder. Lily met his gaze, refusing to shrink. "There wasn't time to do anything else," she replied. A muscle ticked in Ethan's jaw, like he was fighting something. Finally, he exhaled, almost a laugh. "You're dangerous when cornered, Carter." There was no anger in his voice, only admiration. And something deeper, darker. They stood there, for a moment too long, the noise of the world fading around them. Lily could feel it, the pull between them, undeniable, magnetic. And then Adrian chose that exact moment to appear, breaking the spell with a cough. "Boss," he said lightly, "the investors want a quick photo with you." Ethan's eyes lingered on Lily for one final heartbeat before he turned away. She watched him go, her heart doing ridiculous acrobatics inside her chest. This wasn't just a crush, and it wasn't just professional ambition. It was something messier, more dangerous. She should have been scared. Instead, she felt alive, more alive than she had in years. Later that night, after everyone had cleared out and the building had fallen silent, Lily found herself wandering the halls, unable to go home. She ended up on the rooftop terrace, staring out at the city's endless lights. Footsteps sounded behind her, and she didn't have to turn to know who it was. "Couldn't sleep?" Ethan's voice was rough, almost tender. She shook her head. "Couldn't breathe," she admitted. He came to stand beside her, their arms almost touching, but not quite. "You handled today better than most senior managers," he said. Lily laughed bitterly. "I barely survived it." Ethan turned toward her, his expression unreadable. Surviving is an art, and you... His hand twitched at his side, like he wanted to reach for her but didn't dare. You make it look effortless. She met his gaze, feeling the full force of it hit her, intense, consuming. It's not effortless, she whispered. It's just necessary. Without thinking, without planning, Ethan lifted a hand and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch was feather-light, reverent. Lily closed her eyes, leaning ever so slightly into him. The world narrowed to the space between them, an aching, unbearable tension. When she opened her eyes, Ethan was looking at her like she was the only thing that existed. "Lily," he said, her name a prayer, a warning. And then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned in. Their lips met, not in a rush of passion, but in something deeper, a trembling, devastating surrender. It was a kiss born of exhaustion, defiance, survival. A kiss that said, "I see you, I know you, I need you." When they finally broke apart, gasping, stunned, Ethan rested his forehead against hers, his voice breaking. "This is a mistake," he whispered, "a beautiful, inevitable mistake." Lily's hands clutched the fabric of his jacket, anchoring herself. To him, to this impossible, reckless moment. "Maybe," she whispered back, "but it's ours." And for the first time in a long, long time, Ethan Blake let the walls fall. For a few stolen minutes, the world held its breath. Lily and Ethan stood together on the rooftop, lost in a fragile, stolen moment of peace. But reality, as always, found a way to creep back in. Ethan stepped away first, scrubbing a hand through his hair, a low curse slipping from his lips. Lily hugged her arms around herself, feeling the cool night air bite through the heat of their kiss. "This can't happen again," Ethan said hoarsely, not meeting her eyes. His voice was strained, brittle. Lily nodded slowly, even though every cell in her body screamed to disagree. "I know," she whispered. "We can't afford it." Ethan laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. "Affording it isn't the problem. Surviving it is." He turned back to face her then, and for a moment, Lily saw all the cracks beneath the armor he wore so well. "Tell me something real," she said suddenly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "Something no one else knows." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then smiled sadly. "You ask dangerous questions, Carter." She held his gaze, unwavering. "I can handle dangerous." Another beat of silence stretched between them, taut and shimmering. Finally, Ethan exhaled. "When I was 17, he said, voice low, "I was supposed to inherit a company, my father's company. Monarch wasn't mine back then. It was his legacy, his empire." Lily listened, heart aching at the shadows in his voice. "But the night before the board meeting, he told me I wasn't ready. That I'd fail, that I was weak." Ethan's jaw tightened. "He humiliated me in front of everyone I trusted. So I walked away, built my own empire, brick by bloody brick." His voice was rough now, scraped raw by old wounds. "And when Monarch crumbled, years later, I bought it, piece by piece, and I never let anyone close enough to take anything from me again." He looked at her then, eyes burning. "Until you." Lily felt the words like a fist to the chest. "Ethan," she started, but he shook, his head cutting her off. "You don't understand, Lily. You're not just some bright assistant I noticed. You're the crack in the dam, the reminder that I'm still human, and being human in my world." He smiled humorlessly. "It's fatal." She stepped closer before she could second-guess herself. "I don't want to destroy you," she said fiercely. "I don't want anything from you, Ethan, except you." For the first time, she saw real fear flicker across his face. Not fear of her, fear of himself. "That's what scares me most," he murmured. A soft breeze stirred her hair, carrying the scent of rain and city lights. She reached out, taking his hand carefully, grounding them both. "You built yourself from ashes," she said. "You survived hell. You don't have to burn alone anymore." His hand tightened around hers, desperate, almost painful. "Stay," he whispered, the word ripped from him. "Even when it gets ugly, even when I try to push you away." "Nay." Tears pricked at Lily's eyes, but she blinked them back. "I'm not afraid of ugly," she said. "I'm afraid of never taking the chance." A raw, broken sound escaped him, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. He pulled her against him then, holding her like a drowning man clinging to a lifeline. Lily buried her face in his chest, feeling the rapid, ragged beat of his heart under her palms. For the first time, Ethan Blake wasn't the untouchable CEO. He was just a man, scarred, terrified, and finally letting someone see him. They stood like that for what felt like hours, the city's heartbeat thrumming around them. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers again, breathing her in like salvation. "You're not what I planned," he whispered. "You're not what I planned either," she murmured. "But maybe that's the point." A soft chime from Ethan's phone broke the spell. He pulled back reluctantly, glancing at the screen. His jaw clenched. "I have to go," he said. "Trouble?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Always," he said grimly. He hesitated, then pressed a quick, desperate kiss to her forehead. "Stay safe, Carter." And then he was gone, swallowed by the night, leaving Lily standing alone under the glittering city lights. She didn't move for a long time, just stared after him, heart aching with too many emotions to name. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe it would end in heartbreak. But right now, in this sliver of borrowed time, she chose to believe. She chose him. The next morning, the world felt different, softer somehow. Lily walked into Monarch with a quiet sense of defiance burning inside her. She had stood on the rooftop of the world with Ethan Blake and seen the man, not the myth. She had touched the cracks no one else even knew existed. And yet, as the elevator doors slid open and she stepped onto the executive floor, that fragile, new hope shattered almost immediately. Ethan was nowhere to be found. The day passed in a haze of unanswered emails, postponed meetings, and stony silences. Adrian, usually a fountain of sarcasm, seemed unusually subdued. "Blake's tied up," he said when Lily finally cornered him near the coffee bar. "Big fires to put out, corporate politics, you know how it is." But the way he avoided her eyes made Lily's stomach twist. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. By mid-afternoon, the whispers had returned, different this time, colder, sharper. "He's distancing himself," someone muttered. "Near the copier." "Damage control," another replied. "Can't risk a scandal." Lily gritted her teeth, forcing herself to focus on her work. But the doubts crept in anyway, whispering cruel things. Maybe she had imagined it all. Maybe it had been nothing more than a lapse, a mistake he was now desperate to erase. When her shift ended, she didn't go home. Instead, she wandered the city streets, aimless and numb. The bright storefronts and bustling crowds blurred into meaningless shapes. She found herself at a small, dingy diner tucked into a forgotten corner of downtown, the kind of place that never asked questions. She ordered coffee she didn't drink and stared blankly out the window. Hours later, her phone buzzed. A single message from an unknown number. "Don't wait for me." No signature, no explanation, just 4 words that carved her open from the inside out. She left the diner without paying much attention to the world around her, her mind a hurricane of confusion and heartbreak. By the time she stumbled into her apartment, she felt hollow. She dropped onto the couch, curling into herself like a wounded animal. The Ethan she had touched on the rooftop, the vulnerable, broken man, felt like a mirage now. A cruel trick. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she pulled out her laptop and threw herself into work, mindlessly chipping away at spreadsheets and reports until the sun began to rise. If she could just stay busy, she wouldn't have to think, wouldn't have to feel, wouldn't have to remember the way his voice had cracked when he whispered, "Stay." The days that followed blurred into a grey, miserable haze. Ethan returned to the office, but he was different now, colder, sharper, more ruthless. He didn't so much as glance in Lily's direction. Meetings were conducted through intermediaries. Emails were curt and professional. He had built walls, so thick and so high that even a memory couldn't penetrate them. Adrian tried to cheer her up with bad jokes and extra coffee, but even he grew quiet after a while, sensing the futility. "You scared him," he said once, very softly, when they sat alone in the break room. "You made him feel. And for someone like Ethan Blake, that's the most dangerous thing in the world." Lily didn't answer. She just stared into her coffee and tried to forget how it had felt to be wanted. One evening, as she packed up to leave, she found a slip of paper tucked into her desk drawer. It wasn't signed, it wasn't dated, it simply said, "It's not you, it's everything I can't fix." Lily crumpled the note in her fist, fighting the urge to scream. She didn't want apologies written in ink. She wanted the man who had kissed her under the stars, the man who had looked at her like she was the first real thing he'd seen in years. But that man was gone, buried under layers of fear, ambition, and duty. She knew now Ethan Blake would never choose her. Not openly, not fully, not in the way she needed. And maybe she couldn't blame him. Maybe some wounds ran too deep to heal. Still, as she walked away from Monarch that night, head held high despite the shattering inside her, she made herself a promise. She would not be defined by his fear. She would not be another casualty of someone else's brokenness. She would survive. She always had. It had been 3 days since Lily decided she couldn't keep waiting for miracles. She threw herself into her projects with mechanical precision, becoming the employee everyone respected but no one really saw. She didn't smile unless necessary. She didn't linger in hallways or hover near elevators. She worked, she delivered, and she survived. It wasn't living, not really, but it was enough to silence the ache for a while. Friday morning arrived grey and bitter, matching her mood perfectly. She slid into her cubicle, dumped her bag, and flipped open her laptop. Without thinking, but something caught her eye. An envelope, cream-colored and heavy, tucked neatly beneath her keyboard. Her heart stuttered. No name, no mark. Just her desk, her space. Carefully, hands trembling, she opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten. The words were sharp, slanted, and undeniably familiar. Ethan's handwriting. Her fingers gripped the edges as she began to read. "Lily, I'm not a man who apologizes easily. I'm not a man who lets anyone see him bleed. But if I don't tell you this, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. You didn't break me. You didn't ruin me. You reminded me I'm still human." She blinked rapidly, trying to keep the letters from blurring. She kept reading, devouring every word like oxygen. "I pushed you away because I'm terrified. Terrified that the moment you get too close, everything will collapse. That I'll destroy you the way I destroy everything I touch. But running hasn't fixed anything. It hasn't erased the way you make the world seem less heavy. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be the man you deserve, but I want to try. If you can forgive my cowardice, meet me tonight. The rooftop, midnight. No promises, just hope. E." Lily clutched the letter against her chest, unable to breathe. Midnight. Tonight. She looked at the clock. 12 hours to go. 12 hours to decide whether to risk everything all over again. She stood up so fast, her chair toppled over. Adrian, passing by, raised an eyebrow but said nothing, simply giving her a slight nod, silent encouragement from the one person who truly seemed to understand. The day dragged like molasses. Every email, every meeting, every ticking second weighed heavier than the last. Doubt gnawed at her. What if he changed his mind again? What if she showed up and he wasn't there? What if this time the heartbreak was permanent? But deeper still was another voice whispering, what if this time he's ready? When the clock finally struck 10, she fled the building. She spent the next 2 hours pacing her tiny apartment, trying on different outfits, discarding them all. It didn't matter what she wore. It mattered that she showed up, that she was brave enough to choose hope over fear, just this once. She left the apartment with nothing but her courage and the crumpled letter in her coat pocket. The streets were eerily quiet at that hour. Monarch loomed ahead, a monolith against the night sky. She slipped inside unnoticed, her footsteps silent on the marble floors. She took the service elevator, the one staff used, half expecting it to groan in protest at her trembling hands. As the numbers ticked higher, so did her pulse. When the doors opened onto the rooftop, the cold air slapped her awake, and he was there. Ethan stood near the edge, hands shoved deep into the pockets of his black coat, his profile carved from shadow and starlight. He didn't turn at her approach. He just spoke, his voice carried by the wind. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Lily swallowed hard, the lump in her throat nearly choking her. "Neither was I," she admitted. He turned then, slowly, and the look on his face nearly brought her to her knees. It was raw. It was desperate. It was real. "I'm terrified," he said simply. "Every part of me wants to push you away again. Tell you it's safer, cleaner, easier." He took a step closer. "But none of that matters anymore. I don't want easy. I want you." Lily's vision blurred, but she didn't move, didn't speak. She let him come to her, close enough that she could feel the ragged edges of his breath against her forehead. "I'm going to screw this up," he whispered. "I'm going to hurt you, not because I want to, but because I don't know how not to." She reached out, hands trembling, and cupped his face between her palms. "Then we'll learn," she said fiercely. Together. For a moment neither moved. The city stretched endlessly around them, indifferent and beautiful. And then Ethan closed the distance, kissing her like a man starved, a man who had forgotten how to hope but was trying anyway. Lily kissed him back with everything she had, all the fear, the forgiveness, the fragile, reckless faith. When they finally broke apart, Ethan pressed his forehead to hers, breathing hard. "I don't deserve you," he said. "Maybe not," Lily whispered, "but I'm here anyway." And under the silent blessing of the midnight sky, they chose each other. Messy, flawed, human, finally. The next morning dawned with a brightness that felt almost offensive. Lily woke, tangled in her sheets, heart still racing from the night before. The rooftop kiss replayed endlessly in her mind, a fragile, precious memory she clutched to her chest. But reality, relentless as ever, came knocking almost immediately. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a message from Ethan. "Emergency meeting, conference room 9B, 9 a.m. sharp." No kiss emojis, no soft words. Back to business. She smiled wryly, dragging herself out of bed. Ethan Blake wasn't the type to change overnight, neither was she. But maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to navigate the chaos together. She dressed quickly and hurried to Monarch, heart hammering in her chest for reasons that had nothing to do with deadlines. When she entered conference room 9B, the atmosphere was electric. Ethan stood at the head of the table, surrounded by a few grim-faced executives. He barely acknowledged her arrival, but Lily caught the brief flicker of warmth in his eyes before the walls snapped back into place. "We have a situation," Ethan announced, "and a narrow window to fix it." He clicked a remote and a massive blueprint flashed onto the screen. a luxury expansion project, Monarch's crown jewel. "The opening gala is in 3 weeks," Ethan said. "But the project is behind schedule, way behind. If we miss the deadline, we lose millions in investments and our reputation." A heavy silence settled over the room. Ethan's gaze swept the group, sharp and merciless. "I need someone to take over," he said. "Someone ruthless, relentless, creative, someone who can deliver the impossible." Lily felt the weight of his words before he even looked at her. She straightened instinctively, pulse racing. "Carter," Ethan said, "it's yours." Gasps rippled around the room. Lily blinked. "Me," she managed to choke out. Ethan nodded. "You, effective immediately." The executives looked skeptical, some openly disapproving. Lily felt their judgment like needles against her skin, but Ethan's gaze never wavered. "She's the only one I trust to do this," he said, voice steel. The room went deadly quiet. Lily inhaled deeply, fighting the surge of panic rising in her chest. She couldn't fail, not now, not with this much on the line. "I'll need full access," she said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "Authority to reassign. Personnel, budget flexibility." Ethan's lips twitched into the barest hint of a smile. "Done," he said. "And Carter," he leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. "No mercy, not even for me." A chill ran down her spine. She nodded once, sharply. The meeting dispersed, murmurs trailing behind her like smoke. Adrian caught up to her near the elevators, eyebrows raised. "Big promotion, little hurricane," he said, "or big setup?" Lily shot him a look. "Both, probably." Adrian laughed. "At least you're honest." His voice softened. "Be careful, Lily. You're playing chess with a man who only plays to win." The next few days were a blur of chaos. Lily dove headfirst into the project, wielding authority like a newly forged sword. She made enemies quickly, middle managers who resented her, contractors who questioned her decisions. But she also earned grudging respect. She didn't micromanage. She didn't posture. She just worked harder, faster, smarter than anyone else. Ethan hovered at the edges, watching but never interfering. Late at night, when the office emptied out and exhaustion clung to her like a second skin, he would sometimes appear, silent, steady, a grounding presence. They didn't speak about the rooftop, about what they were building between them. It hung between them, unspoken but undeniable. One night, around midnight, Lily found him waiting by the service elevator, 2 coffees in hand. He handed her one wordlessly. She took it, their fingers brushing, a spark igniting despite their exhaustion. "You're not sleeping," he said, not a question. "Neither are you," she replied. A beat of silence passed. Ethan's voice was softer when he spoke again. "You amaze me, Carter." She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not the billionaire, tycoon, not the ruthless CEO, but the man who had chosen her against all his instincts. "You scare me," she admitted. His smile was small but real. "Good," he said. "Means you're paying attention." They stood there for a long moment, coffee growing cold in their hands, the city humming around them. When they finally parted, there were no kisses, no promises, just a shared look, fraught, fierce, and full of something that tasted suspiciously like hope. The challenge was immense, the odds were impossible, but for the first time, Lily didn't feel alone in the fight. She felt chosen, and that made all the difference. The days leading to the gala passed in a breathless frenzy. Lily lived at the construction site, fueling herself with bad coffee and sheer stubbornness. Every minute mattered, every decision teetered between triumph and disaster. She barked orders at workers twice her size, charmed stubborn vendors, patched, upscheduling nightmares with duct tape and prayer. And somehow, against all odds, the project started to take shape. But deep down, she knew it was too fragile, too close to the edge. The morning before the gala, disaster finally struck. A plumbing failure flooded the east wing of the new expansion, one of the key areas for the VIP walkthrough. Water gushed from the walls like open veins. Carpets ruined, walls stained, chaos everywhere. Lily stared at the mess, her mind blank, for the first time in days. Adrian found her minutes later, wading through ankle-deep water. "You okay, boss?" he asked carefully. Lily laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "Do I look okay?" Adrian grinned despite the situation. "Honestly, you look terrifying, which is probably exactly what we need right now." His words snapped something loose inside her. She straightened, jaw set. "Get the maintenance crews, get industrial dryers, call in every favor we're owed." Adrian nodded and sprinted off without another word. Lily grabbed her phone and called. Ethan's private line, heart hammering. He answered on the first ring. "Talk to me," he said, voice sharp. She didn't sugarcoat it. "Flood, east wing. Catastrophic." A beat of silence. "What do you need?" he asked simply. Lily closed her eyes for half a second, savoring the fact that, for once, she didn't have to carry everything alone. "Time," she said, "and a miracle." "I'll buy you both," Ethan said. "Hold the line." True to his word, reinforcements arrived. Within an hour, specialized crews, insurance agents, even a few city officials motivated to speed up approvals. Money moved mountains, Lily realized, but it wasn't the money that saved the day. It was Ethan's absolute, unwavering trust in her ability to salvage the impossible. It was the way he believed in her when she barely believed in herself. For 20 straight hours, Lily fought the disaster with everything she had. She coordinated crews, rewrote floor plans, shifted decorations, bribed florists to deliver new arrangements before dawn. By the time the sun rose, she could barely stand. Her body screamed, her mind blurred. But when she looked around at the finished space, polished, gleaming whole, she felt something fierce and beautiful bloom in her chest. She had done it. She had survived the storm. At 9 sharp, the gala began. VIPs arrived, champagne flowed, the press buzzed with excitement. Lily stood at the back of the room, heart pounding, watching it all unfold like a dream. She spotted Ethan across the crowd, dark suit, sharp smile, every inch the king of his empire. And for once, he didn't hide the way he looked at her. Not with indifference, not with distance, but with pride. Adrian elbowed her lightly. "You realize you just pulled off the impossible, right?" he murmured. Lily smiled, tired but triumphant. "I'm realizing a lot of things tonight," she said. Before she could lose her nerve, she made her way toward Ethan. The crowd seemed to part for her, the music swelling around her steps. When she reached him, he turned, already smiling like he'd been waiting for her all night. "You did it," he said quietly. "No," Lily replied, heart thudding. "We did." For a long moment, they simply stood there, the noise of the party fading into irrelevance. Finally, Ethan leaned in, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "You're everything I never knew I needed," he said. Lily blinked back the sudden sting of tears, overwhelmed by the raw sincerity in his voice. "And you," she said, her voice breaking, "are the best mistake I ever made." Ethan laughed, a real unguarded laugh that wrapped around her like sunlight. "Stay with me, Carter," he said. Not a demand, not a plea, just a simple, breathtaking truth. Through the storms, through the crashes, through the rebirths, she reached for his hand, their fingers threading together effortlessly. "Always," she whispered. And in that moment, against all odds, despite every scar, they chose each other. Not because they were perfect, but because they were real. The gala wound down into a haze of laughter, clinking glasses, and half-faded conversations. Guests trickled out into the cool night, heels clicking against marble floors, bow ties loosened, smiles lingering. Lily stood near the edge of the ballroom, watching it all from a distance, a strange calm settling over her. It was done. She had survived. No, she had conquered. Ethan approached from behind, silent as always, but she felt his presence before. She even turned. "Come with me," he said softly. No room for argument. Lily nodded, heart already racing. Without another word, he led her through the familiar halls, past the polished elevators, up the stairwell she now knew by heart. Higher and higher, until they burst onto the rooftop, where everything between them had first cracked open. The city sprawled before them, glittering and endless. The wind tugged at Lily's hair, lifting it in soft waves around her face. She wrapped her arms around herself against the sudden chill. Ethan stood a few feet away, hands shoved deep into his pockets, staring out at the skyline like it might offer answers he couldn't find anywhere else. "I almost lost this," he said finally, voice low and rough. "All of it, the project, the company, you." Lily stepped closer, drawn by the rawness in his tone. "But you didn't," she said quietly. "You're here." He turned to face her then, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. Not the sharp, calculating look she'd grown used to. Something softer, something broken and brave all at once. "I spent so many years building walls," Ethan said, his voice breaking, "thinking if I could just stay above it all. Untouchable, invulnerable. I could survive, I could win." He laughed bitterly. "But survival isn't living. It's just existing, and I didn't even realize it until you crashed into my life like a damn hurricane." Lily's throat tightened painfully. She wanted to reach for him, to pull him into the safety of her arms, but she waited, letting him bleed the poison out first. "You scared the hell out of me," Ethan continued, "because you made me feel things I didn't think I was allowed to feel anymore. Hope, fear, love." His voice cracked on the last word, and he looked away, furious at his own vulnerability. "I'm still scared," he admitted, "terrified, actually, of failing you, of losing you, of not being enough." Lily couldn't stay silent anymore. She crossed, the distance between them in 3 strides, reaching up to cup his jaw, forcing him to look at her. "Ethan," she said, voice fierce, "you are enough. You were always enough. You just couldn't see it." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch like a man starved for affection. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Maybe not," Lily said, smiling, through the tears burning her eyes. "But I'm here, not because you're perfect, because you're real." Ethan opened his eyes, and for the first time since she met him, the armor was truly gone. "I love you, Lily Carter," he said, the words ragged and desperate. "I love you in ways that terrify me, in ways that make me believe in things I stopped believing in a long time ago." A sob tore from Lily's chest, and she threw her arms around him, holding him like she could stitch his broken pieces back together just by being there. "I love you too, Ethan Blake," she whispered into his shoulder. "More than I probably should, more than is safe, but I don't care. I'm not going anywhere." He pulled back just enough to cup her face between his hands, studying her like she was something miraculous, and then he kissed her, deep, slow, reverent. It wasn't a kiss of lust or desperation. It was a kiss of promises, of beginnings. When they finally parted, breathless and laughing softly, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me," he said again, softer this time. "Build something with me, something real." Lily smiled through her tears. "Only if we agree on one thing," she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "No more running," she said firmly. "Not from me, not from yourself." Ethan nodded solemnly, a man accepting terms that terrified and exhilarated him all at once. "No more running," he vowed, and under the vast, indifferent stars they sealed their pact, not with ink or signatures, but with the battered, stubborn beating of 2 scarred hearts choosing each other over fear. Choosing each other, no matter how many storms still lay ahead. The following days felt like breathing after a lifetime underwater. For the first time, Lily and Ethan allowed themselves to exist beyond work, beyond survival. They carved out stolen moments in between meetings, shared quick smiles across crowded rooms, brushed hands when no one was looking. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about them ever would be. But it was real, and that made it priceless. Still, fear lingered at the edges, whispering caution. Every time Lily caught Ethan staring at her with that raw, unguarded look, she felt it too. The awareness that this fragile thing they were building could shatter with a single wrong move. That even love, fierce and stubborn, might not be enough to silence the ghosts they both carried. On a particularly cold evening, Lily received another unexpected message. "Come to the East Wing, Level 5, Room 511. No signature again. But she knew it was Ethan. His messages always carried that same terse urgency, that same thread of hope woven through the command. She hurried through the empty hotel corridors, heart hammering with excitement and nerves. Maybe tonight he was ready to take the next step, to say the words out loud in the world, not just whispered in the dark. Maybe tonight would be the beginning of everything they had fought so hard to earn. But when she reached room 511 and pushed the door open, she realized instantly she had made a mistake. The room was lavish, yes, but cold, sterile, empty save for a small group of strangers in formal attire, staring at her like she was a lost tourist. An older woman approached her, all sharp smiles and sharper eyes. "You must be the new girl," she said with a tone that dripped condescension. "You're early." Lily started, but the words died in her throat. She realized, with a sinking heart, that she had crashed a private donor event, an entirely different gathering, one Ethan clearly had no part in. She had misread the message, or worse, been misled. Heat flooded her face and she backed out of the room, heart pounding painfully against her ribs. She stumbled into the hallway, humiliated and furious, blinking back tears. How could she have been so stupid, so eager? She pressed herself against the wall, struggling to catch her breath, when a voice broke through her panic. "Lily?" She turned to see Ethan jogging toward her, confusion and concern etched across his face. "What are you doing here?" he asked, reaching for her. She jerked away instinctively, the sting of humiliation still too raw. "I got a message," she said, voice shaking. "Room 511. I thought it was you." Ethan's jaw tightened immediately. His hand shot out, grabbing her gently but firmly by the wrist. "Come with me," he said. No room for argument. Too stunned to resist, she let him pull her through a series of twisting hallways until they burst onto a different floor altogether. He led her to a door at the very end, a rooftop stairwell. The same one where everything had begun. "You were supposed to come here," he said, breathless. "Not there." He fished in his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Lily's heart stopped. "I had it all planned," Ethan said, a rare vulnerability cracking his voice. "I wanted you to find this room. I wanted to be waiting for you. I wanted—" He broke off, raking a hand through his hair in frustration. "I wanted to ask you the right way." Tears burned Lily's eyes, but she bit them back. "Why didn't you just come find me?" she whispered. "When you saw I wasn't where you expected?" "Because I panicked," he admitted, voice rough. "Because for a moment I thought maybe you changed your mind. Maybe you realized you deserve better than this." His gesture was helpless, heartbreaking. Lily stepped forward, placing her hands over his. "You're right," she said softly. His face paled. "I do deserve better," she continued, voice steady. "Better than running, better than fear. Better than empty rooms and mixed signals." She took the box from his trembling fingers, opened it, and revealed a simple, stunning ring, an unspoken promise of everything he couldn't quite say. "But most of all," Lily said, voice breaking, Now, I deserve someone who chooses me every single day, and you—" She smiled through her tears. "You already do." Ethan sank to one knee, not out of tradition, but out of sheer, broken awe. "Lily Carter," he said, voice ragged, "stay with me. Build a life with me, even when I screw up, even when I fall short. Stay." There were no grand speeches, no polished declarations. Just two imperfect people choosing each other in a world that tried every day to pull them apart. "Yes," Lily said simply, 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger with trembling hands. When he rose, she threw herself into his arms, laughing and crying all at once, feeling the final walls crumble around them. And this time there was no running, only falling, glorious, terrifying, inevitable, into the life they were meant to build together. The world outside the rooftop seemed to dissolve into nothingness. All that mattered was the man holding her, as if letting go would break him in ways he couldn't survive. Lily clung to Ethan just as tightly, both of them trembling from the magnitude of what had just happened. This wasn't the polished fairy tale she had once secretly dreamed of. It was something messier, more terrifying, and infinitely more beautiful. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan cupped her face in his hands, searching her eyes as if needing to be sure this wasn't just a fever dream. "You're really staying," he whispered, wonder lacing every syllable. Lily laughed through her tears, a sound light and bright enough to chase away the last shadows clinging to him. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," she said, "wrong turns and all." They stayed on the rooftop for a while longer, wrapped in each other, trading soft words and promises too sacred to shout into the night. Eventually, practicality forced them back inside. Monarch awaited. The world awaited, but they weren't afraid anymore. They would face it together, storm after storm, mistake after mistake, hand in hand. The next few weeks passed in a dizzying blur. Word spread quickly about their engagement, not through official press releases or grand announcements, but through whispers, exchanged looks, and the undeniable way Ethan Blake, the Dragon of Monarch, smiled like a man finally unchained. Some disapproved, of course. Some sneered. Lily didn't care. Ethan didn't care. And that, she realized, was the only approval they ever really needed. One rainy afternoon, exactly 3 months after their rooftop confession, Lily found herself standing in front of a familiar, battered door. Room 511. The place where she had made her last wrong turn. She smiled to herself, heart full to bursting. Ethan appeared at her side, wrapping an arm around her waist. "You sure about this?" he murmured. She nodded, gripping the new set of keys in her hand. Positive. They had bought the entire east wing of Monarch's old expansion project. An act of rebellion, of reclamation. Together, they had transformed it into something new, a non-profit foundation aimed at helping young entrepreneurs build their own dreams, without needing to survive the brutal gauntlet Ethan had faced alone. A place for second chances. For wrong. Turns that somehow led to the right place after all. Inside, sunlight spilled through the newly restored windows, bathing the polished floors in golden light. Volunteers bustled about, painting walls, setting up workstations. Hope buzzed in the air, alive and electric. Lily turned to Ethan, overwhelmed by everything they had built together. "I love you," she said, "because some things deserve to be said out loud every day." Ethan leaned down, brushing a kiss across her forehead. "And I will spend the rest of my life proving you were right too." They spent the rest of the day working side by side, building furniture, making phone calls, laughing over ridiculous plans. It was chaotic and imperfect, and utterly breathtakingly real. When the sun finally dipped below the skyline, they stood together by the tall windows, watching the city light up one building at a time. "Do you ever think about it?" Lily asked, softly, How different things would be if I hadn't walked into the wrong room that day. Ethan smiled, sliding his arms around her waist. Every day, he said, and every day I'm grateful you made the wrong turn, because it led you to me. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady, unbreakable beat of his heart. It wasn't the wrong turn after all, she said. It was the beginning. They stood like that, wrapped in each other as the stars blinked awake above them, silent witnesses to a love that had survived fear, survived pride, survived the impossible. Wrong door, wrong turn, wrong message, right person. Right heart, right place at long last. Wow, what a story, right? I'd love to hear what you thought. Drop a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tell me where you're watching from. And hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out the other stories we have on the channel. There's so much more waiting for you.